Putin responded to the Crimean bridge bombing, and he's very unhappy about it, calling it an act of terrorism and vowing revenge on Kiev and the Ukraine regime.
Киевский режим своими действиями.
This is Putin. I'll go ahead and read it for us all just so we can listen to what he's saying here. He says the Kiev regime, by its actions, has actually put itself on the same level with international terrorist formations, the most notorious groups. It is simply impossible to leave crimes of this kind unanswered, is what he says. He's calling them terrorists. This morning, at the suggestion of our ministry, it's a massive strike with air, sea, and land-based high precision. Long-range weapons was performed against Ukrainian Energy Military Command and communication facilities. And we'll take a look at that. Here he calls it a terrorist attack. If the attempts to carry out the terrorist attack continue, Russia's responses will be tough and proportionate to the level of the threats proposed or posed. No one should have any doubts about this. This is what he says. And that came over from Bloomberg, that translation. Okay, so that's what Putin's response is. He says it's impossible to leave any of these things unanswered. We have a plan with a massive airstrike. The Russian general has put this together. They're going to be using long-range weapons against the Ukrainian facilities, communication facilities, military command, and so on. Now, some of these explosions seem like they may have gone off at non-military locations. We'll take a look at that. But Putin warning and saying, have no doubt, if these continue, there will be some additional consequences. And we've speculated about this before. You know, we're starting to see a pattern here. If there are continual attacks on infrastructure, does that mean that if you can see some motivation behind each one of those attacks, you can identify perhaps a culprit? We talked about this on our morning walk and talk this morning. The idea would be, you know, if you see a pattern with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, if you see where resource infrastructures that provide resources are eliminated and they continue to serve one party, maybe it's fair to apportion responsibility to that one party. If they potentially blew up the Nord Stream pipelines and they're sort of taking credit for this, Putin, I think, is ascribing them blame for both and saying, if you continue to do these things, there will be some serious consequences. The Russians responded to the bombing on the Crimean bridge. Kyiv was facing all sorts of missile and rocket attacks from the Russian military. Here's what it looked like in Ukraine. You can see smoke in the background on the building. You see flames on the ground. Looks like blown out windows from a rocket attack or a bomb that landed on the streets of Kyiv. You see burning fires and firefighters and first responders putting out the flames all across the city. Cars are smacked. You can hear people breathing hard. And the carnage does not look good. Looks like there was also some maybe government buildings or places where people will congregate and participate in their government. But this is what the news agencies are putting out. This is what they're showing us happen. Here's some more scenes from some rubble. This is some scenery from a playground where apparently a rocket attack landed and blew up a playground. So not a fun way to wake up, no matter what part of the conflict you're on. Obviously, you wake up and you are living in a sort of a war zone. Now, some very interesting things happen. You take a look at some of that damage, and you might expect that there would be massive casualties from the attack, but that's not exactly the case. The Kyiv Independent reported that there were 12 killed, 49 injured after the Russian attack on an apartment building. Now, that's just one apartment building. We'll see if there's more deaths that come from this. But Governor Olek said Russian fired 12 missiles, hit residential buildings. Zelensky called the Russian attack absolute evil. So we're waiting for total casualty numbers and total death counts to come out of this thing and see what the damage is. But it is not an ideal situation, regardless of sort of what you believe and what side of the aisle you stand on. I think it's pretty clear at this point that both sides are escalating this. There are now infrastructure attacks on the Russian peninsula, according to them, and they are responding with attacks on the city of Kiev. Here's another clip of what it looked like after some bombs and missiles hit the city. You can see smoke. This is a video. Looks like from somebody's balcony watching the smoke and the bombs go off around the city. And again, I don't know if these were military targets, if these were industrial theaters, or if these were just rockets and missiles lobbed into civilian territory. Either way, it's carnage. Either way, we're seeing escalation by both sides, and it's not looking like there's an off-ramp. They're also saying that the internet is under attack. NetBlocks reporting that maybe the Russians are taking out Ukrainian internet. They posted this with updates. NetBlocks is reporting that there are live internet disruptions in Ukraine. They're saying there's a series of Russian attacks targeting multiple regions of the country. Metrics indicate that national connectivity is now 83% of ordinary levels. And so the internet's a little bit down, but I mean, it's still mostly functioning, 80% at the time, but still mostly functional, I guess. So the bombs went off, but the internet's still working. So we'll take a look and see what else is coming out as a result of this.